thank you, Rhys, for taking the time to be here at our studio at Greiner's office.
Yeah, my pleasure, of course. I love being here.
Awesome. Well, let me do a little intro. I'm going to read your bio, and then we'll jump right into it. I think it's important that everyone knows a little bit about you before we start talking. So, Rhys is a senior associate with MSR Design and has touched a broad range of projects, including libraries, cultural facilities, spaces for nonprofit organizations, and affordable housing, which we're going to focus on today. Rhys has a deep interest in data-driven design with focuses on the art and science of design. He has a passion for exploring the balance between equity distribution within the affordable housing industry and critical thinking. Did I get that all?
I believe so. It makes me sound a little geeky, but that's fine. I'm a little bit of a geek on data. So.
I know, and I want you to elaborate that, because I decided I don't do math anymore. So I'm glad that someone likes to, so thank you.
So, well, it's not just about doing the math. It's really looking at a data-driven design process. To me is using data so that then you can balance the art and science of it. Because there is, there's the intuitive part of design, there's kind of the science part of design, and then of course there's all the things that need to happen so that it can actually be designed. So for me, design with using data is using all sorts of data points, everything from energy modeling to analysis, so that you are really informed about how to try to make the better and right decisions moving forward. It takes some of the emotion out of the buy-in process as well, because then you're able to establish real priorities for the projects, and you can begin to kind of really truly align goals and aspirations around those things so that they stay in the project and they don't get value engineered out, so they are the fundamental piece to the beginning process of it.
What an asset to your clients, because I always feel like unless they have those facts or data, they can't make decisions to move forward.
There's also kind of that balancing act between making sure you're not over-dataing them, because too much information can also cause data paralysis too. And so it's a matter of like trying to sift through that to make it simple so that people can see the priorities that are emerging from it and be able to make an informed choice.
Absolutely. So. Do you think you're unique in that? You're able to do that?
I wouldn't say necessarily unique. I think what I try to do is create that balance and try to look at all sides. It isn't just what I want; it's also what the client is looking for, and also ultimately what the end user would be wanting for the space too. And even working, and I enjoy working with everyone. And to me, cooperation is fundamental towards the success of any project. And that, for me, that's really what doing a data-driven design process is all about, because it is about cooperation and collaboration.
So I'm going to pick on a specific project because we're going to be podcasting with Chris Velasco next with Via Soul.
Certainly.
So I'm curious to know what type of data or what type of information he wanted from you when you were designing Via Soul.
So I initially came onto Via Soul as the sustainability consultant initially for the project. And so my role in that was to kind of look at what would be kind of the best kind of lead strategies, and even beyond lead, looking at well, fit well, even living building challenge, kind of all of the gamut of kind of the again, kind of looking to see what would make the best choices for the project that would align with what would potentially be available, what we could actually do. I was thinking about how I tend to like to approach projects, and it goes back to kind of a more fundamental thing of leaning from living building challenge of the fundamental question of what does good look like. And what I like about that question is that it takes the green out of it for a minute and allows people to actually look at multiple sectors. So who doesn't want something good or better? And for me, I think that gets into a key piece of moving beyond the word sustainability or sustain and trying to move into the idea of thriving or flourishing. And for me, that's really where I think we should be heading, is our conversations need to be geared around how do we thrive, how do we flourish. An important way of getting there, I think, is by being generous. And when you look at nature, one of the things about nature is that when conditions are ripe, and things are provided for, suddenly it becomes very generous. It becomes an ecosystem. And I think that we need to start thinking about our buildings and the way we do business, the way we do all those things. We can't just exist by ourselves. We all need to work together. This tells you probably a little bit of my leanings, but I like the quote of "We all do better when we all do better" by Paul Wellstone, because fundamentally we can't do it by ourselves. And that is a key piece of how you make change. Change happens because everyone works together to do better.
Now, do you use that quote for, or like, do you think that Via Sol and that quote and everyone doing better, is that primarily for affordable housing or any type of housing, you think? Does that fit?
I like to bring it into all my work, but I do think it applies directly to Via Sol, because when you look at like the aspirations and goals of what the project is, it is combining arts, it is combining energy, it's combining water, it's combining food, and creating places that people want to be. And so you're creating a whole living kind of community, even though, yes, we are focused primarily on LEED as our sustainability strategy, but I would say it actually goes further than that, because it goes into that bigger question of what does good look like.
I feel like I might be driving us off topic and stealing Chris's thunder by if we talk too much about Via Sol, but it's such a unique project. So I'm going to kind of rein it back in to a little bit about the affordable housing and why are you so passionate about it? Okay, actually no. First I want to go back. I want to find out why affordable housing is a hot topic in Minneapolis right now.
So for me, I think there's kind of three pieces to affordable housing. First is dignity. That when we don't have places that provide a sense of dignity, things degrade. And you can see that kind of all over the place. You can see it in all of our cities. You can see it in the rural areas too. When people don't have a sense of dignity, things fall apart. We had
at our MinCrew program, we had 180 communities, I think it's called, and they designed a space for women who are being sexually abused under the age of 16. They created a shelter for them, and they found that they would get 100% of them to stay there if they had some input on the type of design of their room, or got to choose the color, or got to choose something about it. And I loved that, and that kind of gave them a sense of belonging, or maybe dignity, you'd say. But anyway.
The other one is about removing barriers. So removing barriers are things like the equity issue of who gets kind of what, where things should be located. And then the most important is access to education and services. And without those things, the affordable housing piece doesn't quite work without providing those other access things. Because there's so many people that are coming with disadvantages, and there's basic life skills that are needed. And for them to have success, by removing kind of all those barriers to them and creating a dignified life for them, they actually have a chance then of rising back up and wanting more.
Do you think Minneapolis has done this successfully and provided affordable housing successfully?
I think we've done a fairly good job in certain locales. However, there still is definitely an image issue about traditional affordable housing. And a lot of neighborhoods not wanting the housing in. Some of the housing has been just too clustered and not distributed evenly enough throughout to make it successful. The other thing is that we're not very good at offering a series of typologies, because the apartment building isn't necessarily the right affordable housing for everyone, but that's currently the main model that's being introduced because it's what works financially currently in the marketplace. However, there's a lot of families that would be better off in single-family housing or triplexes, and the 2040 plan for Minneapolis is trying to address that. But the problem is that type of capital is more of a small developer type of capital and not a mid-range or large developer that'd be interested in doing that. So it's a 1-2 small approach. So to gain that momentum is going to take a large collective of individuals wanting to do that to make that part happen. So I think that's going to be a little bit harder to see change on that.
I hope that it does change.
I hope so too. I think it will. I think now, especially because prices have escalated so much recently, the concept of ownership, especially in the Twin Cities, is changing a lot. And so maybe that stigma of the apartment building is changing as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you foresee multifamily housing, or affordable housing, do you see there being a drop in building anytime soon? It just seemed like that's what kept us through the pandemic, that we were really busy. Our multifamily housing and affordable housing kept us very busy. Is that going to change?
I don't think so. I think the issue is that we still have so many households that are kind of packed in with multiple households living together that are still not fully accounted for. Mm-hmm. And I think people are also looking for newer housing that has been updated. And so as the nice thing about affordable housing is because it has to follow a higher standard, mm-hmm. Which is a little different than the market rate. You know that the materials going in are actually safer. It has to meet a higher level of energy performance. And so there's a bunch of things that are already kind of baked into that equation that are actually delivering a little higher quality product, mm-hmm. Than what's necessarily being delivered in the market rate. The market rate tends to focus on a lot of amenities, mm-hmm. and things coming with it that community might want, whereas the affordable housing is really focused on more quality products, better air quality, and more durability as well. And now there's starting to be this pairing of bringing in more meaningful amenities rather than just kind of the 1-2 kind of approach. It's really creating kind of a larger community, which that's what I liked about Via Sol, is that we are actually creating a true working, living, breathing, eating community with it. So
we're gonna have to touch more on that. Yeah. But you brought up a good point about the difference between market rate and affordable. And when you said affordable, you talked about better quality of construction. And or quality build. When I think about quality, I think more expensive. Is that accurate? Like if I was a developer and I was looking to develop either an affordable housing project or a market rate project, how would I decide, and what would be the benefits? Where do you think I would lean to?
Well, I would say actually in the nonprofit world, I think actually building affordable housing tends to be more expensive than market rate currently, because what it's looking at the long term. So you are trying to make sure that you're not going to be replacing things too quickly. You are willing to put, if the budget can support it, you are willing to put in the better weather barriers, the stronger insulation package, typically putting in other kind of quality amenities. So even the millwork has to be up at a higher standard because it's being built for durability. Mm-hmm.
Are you, for someone who's building in the affordable world as a developer, are you incentivized by the city or can you get money to do so?
Well,
how does that work?
No, not exactly. That's the conundrum with it. So then you tend to have very dedicated nonprofit developers who are willing to kind of forego the money aspect of the projects because they're more focused on trying to do better.
So my understanding too of market rate versus affordable housing is that as a developers primarily will hang on to affordable housing, right? It's a long-term investment.
It's a very long, you're probably owning it for life.
For life, okay. And then market rate is something that's probably built and then
it's turned.
It's
a commodity. It's more of a commodity-based type of project.
Do any market rate projects ever turn into affordable housing projects? Ever happen?
Not very often. I mean, what is tending to happen now is like the 1950s buildings that were market rate apartments at those time are now being converted, but that's a really long sunset. And it's being picked up into affordable just because other developers are looking at it and saying it's too old or too vintage of a product to convert into a new market rate condition.
Fair enough. So what does the future look like for affordable housing?
In the short-term view right now, it is harder because of the price increases, the escalation, material shortages, kind of everything that we've all been...
It's all like doom and gloom now.
It has felt a little bit of that. However, the thing about affordable housing again is that long-term view. And so it is always trying to figure out how to do better with less. And so you're always still kind of trying to manage those pieces with it. And I do think that like the new green communities for Minnesota is coming out. That raises the bar again on energy performance levels, and is more closely tracking to the B3 Minnesota B3 guidelines. And
Can you elaborate on that B3 guidelines?
So the B3 guidelines are a state-mandated guideline for quality, and so it's saying that buildings need to be only using a certain amount of energy. You need to determine what your water reduction loads are. We also need to pay attention to the toxicity of materials. We're looking really closely at the lifespan and life cycle of things, and now we're starting to look at embodied carbon footprints of what these buildings are making and doing.
That's fascinating. And does that type of data really excite you?
It does, actually. Yeah. I actually really enjoy kind of parsing through all of that and then trying to then figure out what is the right pathway, because each project is different, and understanding what might be the best fit. To me, that's kind of where the secret sauce is, and I like kind of moving those things around.
I love that. You mentioned, so that was the short-term future of affordable housing. What about long-term?
So long-term, I think that there will be a continued input of more money into affordable housing, because unfortunately, I think that everyone is seeing the gap increasing between have and have-nots. And so we know that is getting worse and worse. So I do think that there will actually be more funding made available. And of course, it always depends upon the different administrations that are in power. But I do think that right now it feels that there is going to be a much bigger push on creating more availability of resources for affordable housing, and maybe not just offered in the traditional financing and kind of management, but other pathways. So, Via Sol was a little bit different because we ended up using 503C bonds to build the project, which is a little different kind of structure than what has been traditionally used for a lot of other housing projects. And I think we're going to start to see more of that kind of more inventive ways of using financing to kind of get the affordable housing projects launched.
Okay, well, that's something to look forward to. So you design on a national level, right?
We do, yes.
Now, do you see any communities there that do it well that we should emulate? Or do you think that Minneapolis does affordable housing in?
I think we do it well. So the difference with Minneapolis, say, to California, of course, is climate. So the climate plays a really big role in how housing is shaped and what it can deliver. I think affordable housing projects that really look at having the right balance of outdoor open space, other amenities and community gathering spaces, things that people will actually have a voice in, are incredibly important for viability. That if it's just a box and it doesn't have any of those other things, then people won't love it.
Yep.
And I think for housing to be successful, people need to have that sense of place, to have that sense of pride and wanting to be there.
So in California, as far as outdoor space, they have so much. They can get kind of creative because their weather is so much different. But I think in Via Sol, wasn't there like an urban garden or some?
Well, there's a 1 acre urban forest, which is very unusual.
What does that mean?
So the urban forest in this case is to help to kind of offset. So it's a large kind of carbon commitment towards creating a larger outdoor space, which is unusual for affordable housing. So it's going to contain gardens, it contains kids playing areas, and then adult kind of recreation, along with the bike trail kind of coming through the space. It's also a way to engage for public art. So the Museum of Outdoor Art is curating several pieces that will be through the urban forest and around the building. And then there'll be these large artist murals that'll be on the building surface too, and in the shared balconies. So it's about kind of creating this common community space. But at the same time, it will have large trees in it and a biodiverse area. So the plants are all designed so they work together towards each other. And then it's also diverting all of the stormwater from the building and recirculating it underneath that area to percolate. So 100% of the stormwater is being managed.
So that 1 acre spot could have been maybe an expansion of the building or surface parking or anything.
Right,
but
so in
it
market
didn't.
rate,
It wasn't.
the tendency would have been to probably have put more building on that site. And in here they said, no, we really want to balance this space so that we have places that people really want to be, so that then kids can have places to really play. It's not just a token kind of playground, but it's really a place for families to be.
That's awesome. Do you think that Via Sol is the future of affordable housing?
I think so. I think it's a really good model for how to do that because, again, the interiors are simple. However, they have a sense of dignity about them, and we are using kind of higher end finishes that are going into the apartments so that they will last a lot longer. But they're also allowing for a lot of personality and flexibility of the tenant coming in to use the space because there's the building is also designed for creatives. So artist groups and makers can be living there and exhibiting their work. And so the hallways are actually designed so that on open days, that artwork can actually be hung in the hallways. People can be invited into the units. There's a series of kind of shared kind of gallery spaces sprinkled throughout the space. And then, of course, the shared balconies. So again, it's really kind of creating this kind of really wonderful community I hope that people will love to be in.
You sound very passionate about it. Is this because, did Chris give you the leeway to design it and do whatever you want, or was there a lot of input was it a collaborative effort?
It was a collaborative effort. I mean, there was, a place that had come with their design goal, with some design goals and aspirations, and we all worked really hard together to talk about, well, how do we elevate these so that they can actually be manifested in the building? Because you can write out a list of lofty goals, but if they don't manifest themselves, then it isn't really there. And so I think that was really our task, was then how to try to manifest all those pieces in there. So for instance, we'll have, I think, 1.2 megawatt of solar PV, which is going to be one of the largest arrays for a residential building in Minnesota. It will have a wind turbine that will also be generating power. It's got green roofs on it, and then of course the greenhouse that'll be able to feed 300 families. And then hopefully the future biodigester, so it can take the compost from people. I'm going to
save that for the next.
Yes, I know that is unfortunately, but the space is designed so that hopefully the biodigester can come in once the city buys off on it, which I know has been an ongoing issue for the UL labeling.
Well, it is patented. It is something very new.
It is new.
Yeah, but how cool would it be though to be the first city to
adopt it, to adopt it and to then use it as a closed loop system. And it's kind of elegant in a way because you're taking the waste that you're generating right there, bringing it right in, creating, from the compost, using it to create the natural gas.
Elegant is a really nice term.
And you're actually generating CO2 that then feeds into the greenhouse, which the plants then take and then, make food back, and then you eat the food and creates that kind of cycle.
So we want to get to futures and predictions. We kind of already talked about what the future looked like. So how can we sum up future and predictions for affordable housing? We know it's not going to go away, right? It's needed. We need more of it. I guess how can we all be better? How can we open our minds to it? What can we do to create or allow for this need?
So I think in taking the long view, it is about trying to remove the barriers and the stigma. And I think part of the stigma goes away by creating places that people love. If people love the place, they take care of it. And a lot of things kind of solve themselves. And so I think once we start creating places and communities that people love to be in, they become self-perpetuating. They thrive, they flourish, they kind of do all of those things. And I think that's kind of what the role of, that's kind of our job, is to try to create those places that people will want to be in and will take care of.
Well, I hope that I hope that happens, and I think it will. I feel it and I see it, and I think people are more open to talking about it now too.
Right. And I think the other thing that I think is interesting with Via Sol is because we are really actively trying to look at a holistic model of living for the place. By really addressing energy, which is kind of top of mind for everybody these days with looking at $4 and $5 gas, thinking about if you're able to remove energy as a barrier to people, and that money is then going into paying for other things, I think that begins to kind of change people's mind a lot about what housing can be.
At Via Sol, is the goal to not have, is for people to bike and walk and to have a community where you don't need a car?
Right. So the location was set up on the light rail, the future light rail station that is being built right now, so that yes, you can have the rail transit. There's also bus available, and of course it's right off the Cedar Lake Trail, so you have great access to biking.
Great
and it's a bike
location.
superway, really, a super highway right there. And then in addition to that, there is also rental hour car, Zip car, that's going to be there. There's also a large amount of electric plug-ins, so we're looking to the future, because as we begin to electrify our cars, paying attention to that, that's actually a big barrier for most affordable housing. Most affordable housing does not have access to electrification needs for parking. So we're trying to actively pay attention to that for the future.
With all those solar panels for Via Sol, I would think that power shouldn't be an issue.
Well, yes, but it is interesting because powering cars actually does require a fair amount of power, but we are trying to balance that. So Via Sol is going to be acting as its own utility, and will actually be then, its utility bills will actually be going individually to the tenants, but it will be at a reduced cost. And so there's actually an incentive to be there, because your electric bill will actually be lower than paying for standard energy through a deal that's been worked out with Xcel Energy.
Well, Rhys, thank you for being so passionate about the design and everything that you do. Your data that you use to help your clients bring projects to reality, which is amazing. So thank you for being a beacon.
Well, thank you too. It's been great actually working with Greiner.
Awesome.
You guys have just really stepped up, came up with a great game plan, and now it's all being executed, and it's just kind of moving along. I'm looking forward to it opening.
I can't wait.
So.
I can't wait to see it and take some tours. And I think it should be, I think tours are starting in right now. So it's...
They start Wednesday.
Yeah, perfect timing. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Rhys.
Yeah, thank you.